Standing up for truth is often a very painful thing. And I think about the many moments of my life where I've had to make a decision, and that decision wasn't necessarily something that came easy, where I was pondering something in terms of what to do. And those decisions, they're big and small at all ages or all stages of my life. When I was smaller, it might have been figuring out how to respond to somebody that was not doing well to me in the classroom. When I'm older, it's making bigger life choices in terms of, do I actually abide by a scientific finding, for example, that has been validated, or do I go with the consensus because it's easier, or do I sleek away and not say anything about this particular thing? And many times I I I have to think about this, and when I do, um, I have to not only think about it because that decision is often, it's often clear what the right decision is, but it doesn't bode well with other people. So then the harder decision, the harder thing that is not often correct, I often get this wrong, is figuring out how to communicate that, how to say it such that it's not necessarily going to raise some alarms. And as I have gotten older, I have realized that it's about the communication of things that really matters, but then as well, waiting to the appropriate time to say it, and always putting the pressure on and what is right, what is just. Those things are very much clear. And then figuring out how to communicate it at the right time so somebody actually hears it. And the vast majority of the time, if you're thinking about it kind of statistically, most people are not going to hear what you're going to have to say. They're not going to see it. And if you're thinking of statistically, it's like if you were to tell 1,000 people what you're trying to say, you'd be lucky to have one person that would hear what you're trying to say if you did it correctly at the right time. And that's okay. And that's where you have to do a lot of work internally in terms of what you believe and how you think about things so that you can do what's just and right in your mind and live something that you would be proud of. And I'm struck by how often these challenging questions actually are made, which I guess that's part of growing up. I guess that's part of being somebody that is operating in this world. But it strikes me as something that I would never have expected. But I recall a lot of things like this that don't necessarily jive with popular culture, but you know what the right answer is. And I'm thinking about things like smoking. I remember going to my high school, and I was in a rural high school, very rural high school, and I remember in grade 9, and this is when I was like 13 years old, there was, I would say, a quarter of the people would be smoking, and they would be smoking outside. Maybe not a quarter, but some substantial amount of the people would be smoking standing outside. Now I think about that and how crazy that was, but that was an artifact of the early 1990s. But I never did that. And I knew that that was the right thing to do, but it felt not right. It felt like I was pushing against the norm, pushing against what everybody was sort of compelling you to, or popular culture was compelling you to do, but you knew what the right answer is. And I think deep down inside, those people that actually smoked knew what the right answer was as well. I think about a lot of moments like this that the sort of truth is obvious and we all know what the right answer is, but it doesn't sit well. And so then you have to figure out, what does it mean for me to be part of this? How do I handle this? What does this actually look like? And that truth might not fit with public opinion or what some people, some dominant individuals in your life or in public figures might actually consider you to think about or want you to abide by. And we have to take a step back and realize that often doing the truthful thing requires you to simply say, I am me and I am good enough. And those decisions, despite how difficult that they often are, the challenges that we often face with standing up to what, it's not even, that's the thing, it's not even like a single individual often, it's not like a bully, sometimes it is, or, a bad boss, sometimes it is, but it's often the sort of general consensus that popular culture wants us to believe. And do I even know what that is? And I don't think that I don't even know what that is. What are the things that are identified? But we know, we have that feeling inside that there is another way, or the expectation is we should abide by another way that somehow looks or feels different than what we're doing, that is not necessarily as truthful of what we're doing. Maybe that's my Catholic guilt, I guess, from being raised in a very Catholic family. But the irony is that guilt often is for things that are not necessarily good for you and good for society in terms of complying with those things. I'm just saying, if we're going to pursue truth, sometimes you don't have to say it publicly. Sometimes you don't have to say it right now. Sometimes you don't necessarily make a deal out of anything, but you still pursue it, and you still follow what is good truth, even though the rest of the world is telling you otherwise. And I think it's a bit of our civic duty to, if the time is right, if it feels natural, if it feels like it is a good thing, to say some of that truth once in a while, to rub a little bit of somebody in the wrong way so that they might think. But getting people to think is a challenging balance that we have to make. And I think realizing that truthfulness might not necessarily come in the way that you expect it to. It's not going to be a moment. And I think that's the challenging thing with being a professor myself, is that it's challenging because it doesn't necessarily have to come, that sort of change or epiphany or whatever. It doesn't have to come in the classroom. It might actually happen 10 years down the road, where somebody finally listens or finally sort of sees what you're getting at, and then you hit it. And that's the challenge. You have to sort of say, this is what it means to follow truth. And then you hope, maybe it never happens, but you hope it actually makes some sort of difference in somebody's life eventually. I think about the moments where I
shed a lot of how I thought about the world. I remember one explicitly that I was really, I would have leaned on a spectrum that is probably in popular culture, I think, at this moment. And I was probably growing up in a family that would have been very consistent with a certain perspective. But, and I don't want to throw anybody, I don't want to make this into like a political thing or anything. But I remember moments, not in the classroom, just later, when I was younger, in my 20s, where all of a sudden I was like, wait, wait, what am I thinking here? Why do I have this feeling? Why am I so upset about this? And then I just kind of flipped. And I kind of was like, well, that's dumb. Why do I... I'm not saying that in a pejorative way, but, I'm feeling that myself is kind of silly. And that's where I changed my thoughts. And there was nobody around. There was not a teacher in sight, or professor or whoever, but I just changed my view. And in fact, I remember it in a cafeteria, where all of a sudden I just started thinking differently about the world, and I felt a little less afraid or angry, or I don't know, like it just hit. And I think it's more truthful than what I had before, the views that I had before. And I think we all go through these many of us go through these moments. And so that's why if you're seeking truth and you're trying to tell other people what that truth is, and again, truth is kind of a make-believe construct, but we know some basic things about humanity. We could be nicer to human beings. I think that is more truthfulness, to teach people to be nicer. We could try to make a better difference on this world where we clean things up. I think that's more truthfulness. And I think we could do better with this. We just have to remember when we're pursuing truth and what that actually means, that we not only be kind to other people and realize that they're going through their own separate journeys, whatever that is, but also that ourself are going through journeys. And so even if somebody doesn't listen or think about what you're trying to say, that doesn't mean that you didn't resonate with what they're trying to... It didn't mean you didn't resonate with them, and eventually they might sort of see your thoughts and how you're thinking. That's all I wanted to say. All right. Take care and have a wonderful day.